Welcome to our channel, where we bring you the most spine-chilling tales and unsettling true stories. Today, we have a story Shakuntla Devi, a haunting legend of Lahore College for Women University. The air is thick with excitement and anticipation as a convoy of cars and taxis pull up to the imposing wrought iron gates of the LCWU hostel. A cacophony of honking horns, chattering students, and the distant sound of luggage being unloaded fills the early evening. The grandeur of the hostel, with its sprawling lawns and ancient, ivy-covered brick walls, stands tall and proud, a silent sentinel to the countless stories it has held within its confines over the decades. Anam, our protagonist, steps out of a taxi, her eyes wide as they drink in the sight of the place that will be her home for the next 4 years. A psychology student with a penchant for skepticism. She is a young woman of medium height, with an athletic build and dark hair that falls in soft waves around her oval face. She's dressed in a simple salwar kameez, her eyes a piercing shade of brown that seem to see right through the veneer of the world around her. She carries with her a single suitcase, a symbol of her no-nonsense approach to life. As the students make their way to the hostel, they are greeted by the warden, Mrs. Gupta, a stern but fair woman whose smile is as warm as the glow of the setting sun. She assures them that they will find friendship, knowledge, and perhaps, if they are very lucky, a little bit of themselves in the hallowed halls of LCWU. The students exchange nervous glances, each one feeling the weight of the expectations they have brought with them. The corridors of the hostel are a labyrinth of history and mystery. The walls are lined with photographs of past residents, their faces frozen in time, each one telling a silent story. The floorboards creak underfoot, echoing the whispers of secrets that have been shared in these very halls. Anam's room is a cozy, well-lit space with a single bed, a desk, and a window that looks out onto the sprawling lawn. As she unpacks her belongings, the room seems to breathe a sigh of relief, welcoming her into its embrace. The first night is a blur of introductions and ice-breaking activities. The laughter and chatter are balm to the nerves of the newcomers. But as the night deepens and the lights begin to dim, the atmosphere shifts. The whispers of the wind outside seem to carry with them the faint scent of jasmine, a scent that lingers in the air even when there are no flowers in sight. The students exchange knowing glances, for they have all heard the story of Shakuntla Devi, the ghost who is said to haunt the very corridors they now call home. Shakuntla Devi was a student like them, so the legend goes, a young woman whose life was cut tragically short. Her spirit is said to wander the halls, seeking justice for a wrong that was never righted. The tale is a cautionary one, a reminder to tread lightly in the shadow of the past. Anam, ever the skeptic, dismisses the whispers as mere fabrications designed to scare freshers. But as the days pass, she can't help but feel the eerie presence that seems to hover just beyond the edge of her vision. It's as if the very air in the hostel is charged with something unseen, a presence that sends shivers down her spine. One evening, as she studies in the dimly lit library, she feels a sudden, inexplicable chill. She looks up from her book, her breath misting in the cold, and sees a flicker of movement in the corner of her eye. But when she turns to look, there's nothing there, just the scent of jasmine lingering in the air like a ghostly embrace. Her curiosity piqued, Anam begins to investigate the legend of Shakuntla Devi. She pores over dusty archives and forgotten newspaper clippings, piecing together the tragic tale of a young woman whose spirit is said to walk the halls of the hostel. As she digs deeper, she discovers that there is more to the story than mere campfire ghost stories. There are unanswered questions, a mystery that has remained unsolved for decades. Her investigations lead her to a tattered diary, hidden away in the back of an old bookshelf. The pages are yellowed with age, but the handwriting is clear, and the words within are filled with pain and longing. It is the diary of Shakuntla Devi herself, a first-hand account of her life and the events that led to her untimely death. The diary tells of a love affair that was as fierce as it was forbidden, a love that burned so brightly it threatened to consume them both. It speaks of betrayal and heartache, of a girl who was let down by those she trusted most. Anam reads the final entry, her heart heavy with the weight of the girl's sorrow. It seems that Shakuntla's spirit is indeed trapped here, unable to move on until the truth is revealed. Determined to uncover the truth and free Shakuntla from her eternal torment, Anam enlists the help of her new friends. Together, they form a band of amateur sleuths, piecing together the puzzle of Shakuntla's life and death. They interview the hostel staff, who speak in hushed tones of the ghostly occurrences they have witnessed. They scour the grounds for clues, finding themselves drawn to the old, abandoned wing of the hostel, where the scent of jasmine is strongest. As they explore, Anam feels the presence of Shakuntla Devi growing stronger. It's as if the very walls are whispering to her, urging her to find the answers that have been buried for so long. The chills become more frequent, the whispers more insistent, and then, one night, they stumble upon a hidden room, the door almost seamlessly blending into the wall. The room is a time capsule, untouched by the hands of time. There, they find a locket with a photograph of Shakuntla and her lover, a young man whose identity remains a mystery. Inside the locket is a letter, written in a hand that shakes with emotion. It speaks of a love that could never be and a promise that was never kept. The group is torn between excitement and fear as they realize they are closer to the truth than they ever thought possible. But as they delve deeper into the past, they awaken something that was meant to stay buried. The whispers become louder, the cold drafts more intense, and the scent of jasmine more overpowering. The episode culminates in a heart-stopping moment when Anam confronts the ghost of Shakuntla Devi. The spirit, a shimmering apparition of beauty and sorrow, appears before her, the scent of jasmine almost suffocating in its intensity. Anam holds the locket out to her, offering the lost girl the chance to finally find peace. But the ghost does not take it. Instead, she points to the photograph, her eyes filled with an anger that transcends the grave. It seems there is more to the story than they ever could have imagined. And as the camera pans out, leaving Anam standing alone in the cold, haunted room, the audience is left with a cliffhanger that promises a season of chills, thrills, and the unraveling of a mystery that has haunted the LCWU hostel for far too long. The episode ends with a lingering shot of the locket, the ghostly hand pointing to the photograph, and the sound of a distant, mournful sigh that seems to carry the weight of all the unspoken words and unshed tears of Shakuntla Devi's tragic tale. Anam, a young psychology student with a penchant for the unexplained, poring over dusty books in the dimly lit library archives of LCWU. The hallowed halls of the historical hostel whispered with secrets of the past, and she was determined to unravel the most enduring one, the tragic tale of Shakuntla Devi. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, as the first episode's eerie undertones had already planted seeds of curiosity in the viewers' minds. Anam's eyes darted from book to book, her determination unyielding. Finally, her quest led her to an ancient, leather-bound diary, almost hidden away on a shelf, so high it seemed to have been placed there deliberately out of reach. The diary was embossed with the name Shakuntla Devi in faded gold letters. With trembling hands, she opened it, revealing pages yellowed by time and filled with the scrawling handwriting of a tormented soul. The diary was a gateway to the past, and Anam stepped through it eagerly. The entry spoke of a woman whose heart had been torn apart by fate. Shakuntla had been a student at the university, much like Anam and her friends, filled with hopes and dreams of a bright future. Yet, her story was interwoven with a dark tapestry of love, loss, and an inexplicable force that seemed to stalk her every move. Her words painted a picture of a tumultuous time, her emotions spilling onto the pages in a cathartic release. Anam read of Shakuntla's unrequited love for a professor, Dr. Siddharth Gupta, who was married and entangled in a web of his own secrets. The agony of her heartbreak was palpable, resonating through the decades to touch Anam's heart. The narrative grew more intense with each page turned. Anam learned of Shakuntla's descent into madness, driven by the relentless whispers of a malevolent presence that seemed to feed on her despair. The diary spoke of strange occurrences, unexplained sounds, and a sense of being watched that grew more oppressive with each passing day. It was clear that Shakuntla had been tormented. Her mind unraveling, she sought refuge in the very walls of the hostel that had once been her home. Inspired by what she had read, Anam decided to share her findings with her friends. They gathered in a cozy nook of the library, the flickering candlelight casting shadows on their faces as they listened intently. The diary passed from hand to hand, each of them feeling the weight of the tragic tale it contained. The group grew closer, bound by the shared thrill of uncovering the hostel's dark history. Among them was a daring spirit named Natasha, who suggested they hold a séance in room 302, the very room where Shakuntla was said to have taken her own life. The room had been sealed off for decades, the door marked with a simple "Do Not Disturb" sign that had grown tattered and faded with time. The others looked at Natasha with a mix of excitement and trepidation, but Anam's skepticism was palpable. The group debated the idea, weighing the potential dangers against their curiosity. The whispers of the other students grew louder in their minds. The legend of Shakuntla's ghost, a siren's call that grew more alluring with each passing moment. Finally, Anam relented, intrigued by the possibility of a psychological experiment that could shed light on the workings of the human mind under the influence of fear and suggestion. They gathered the necessary items for the séance: a Ouija board, candles, and the recording device to document the event. As they approached room 302, the hallway grew colder, the air thick with the scent of jasmine, Shakuntla's favorite flower. The door creaked open, revealing a space that had been untouched for years. Dust motes danced in the moonlight that streamed through the cracked window, and the room was suffused with an eerie silence that seemed to hold its breath. The séance began with the lighting of the candles, their flickering flames casting grotesque shadows on the walls. The students sat in a circle, their eyes fixed on the Ouija board as Natasha took charge, her voice low and steady as she called upon the spirit of Shakuntla Devi to join them. The air grew colder still, and the candles flickered erratically, casting shifting patterns across the room. At first, there was no response. The planchette remained stubbornly still, and the silence grew heavier. Anam took notes, her skepticism unshaken, while the others shifted nervously in their seats. Then, almost imperceptibly, the planchette began to move. It glided across the board, spelling out words that sent shivers down their spines. The questions they asked were met with cryptic answers that seemed to hint at a truth far more sinister than they had ever imagined. The spirit grew more agitated as the night wore on, the room temperature plummeting until their breaths formed clouds in the air. The whispers grew into a cacophony, and the students felt as though they were being watched by unseen eyes. Anam, ever the scientist, kept her cool, trying to discern any signs of trickery or mass hysteria among her friends. Suddenly, the planchette shot to the corner of the board, pointing to the word "stop." The candle sputtered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. A gust of icy wind swept through, knocking over books and sending the Ouija board skittering across the floor. When the lights flickered back on, the door to the room slammed shut with a finality that seemed almost violent. Panic ensued. The students scrambled to their feet, their hearts racing. But Anam remained calm, her curiosity piqued. She had felt something, a presence that was undeniably real. Her skepticism had been shaken to its core. As they filed out of the room, the door to room 302 creaked open once more. Anam turned back, drawn by an irresistible force, and caught a glimpse of a figure in the shadows. It was the unmistakable silhouette of a woman, dressed in the garb of a bygone era, her eyes filled with a sorrow that seemed to reach out and touch her very soul. The figure vanished as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Anam questioning her own sanity. The episode ends with Anam sitting in her room, the diary open on her desk, the recording of the séance playing softly in the background. The voice of the spirit grew clearer, and Anam realized that it was not just a figment of their imaginations. Shakuntla's voice was indeed speaking to them, her story unfolding in a way that was both chilling and mesmerizing. The final words of the recording sent a shiver down her spine. "I am still here. I need your help." The camera zooms in on Anim's face. A mix of fear and determination etched into her features. She knew that she had to uncover the truth, not just for the sake of her curiosity, but for the tormented soul of Shakuntla Devi. The camera pans down the dimly lit corridor of the LCWU hostel. The walls adorned with peeling paint and aged photos of former residents. The eerie silence is broken by the sound of footsteps approaching. Anam, a young psychology student with a determined look on her face, stops in front of the infamous room 302. She takes a deep breath and opens the door. The room 302 is cold, the air thick with a faint scent of jasmine. Anim's breath fogs in the chilly air. She steps inside, her eyes scanning the room, taking in the dusty furniture and the single bed with a rumpled blanket. The curtains flutter slightly, despite the closed window. Anam feels a shiver run down her spine. Anam sits at a desk, surrounded by dusty books and a thick layer of silence. She opens Shakuntla's diary, her eyes devouring the yellowed pages. The diary reveals a poignant tale of love, loss, and a burgeoning sense of dread. Shakuntla's words paint a vivid picture of her life, her thoughts, and her descent into madness. At night, a huddle of students, including Anim's friends Ria, Shivam, and Tanya, sit around a table, their voices hushed. They share their experiences of the strange occurrences in the hostel. Ria describes her encounter with a chilling cold spot, while Shivam recounts hearing whispers in the dead of night. Tanya's story of her bed shaking uncontrollably sends a ripple of fear through the group. Anam, unable to sleep, sits up in bed, her eyes reflecting the light from her laptop screen. She reads an article about an ancient curse that may have befallen Shakuntla. The article speaks of a vengeful spirit that feeds on fear and sadness, growing stronger with each passing year. Armed with flashlights, Anam and her friends explore the musty basement, guided by the diary's cryptic references to a hidden chamber. They stumble upon a concealed door, its rusted hinges squeaking as Anam pushes it open. Inside, they find a treasure trove of Shakuntla's belongings, her stories, her books, and personal letters, all left untouched for decades. The chamber is a shrine to Shakuntla's life, filled with objects that speak of her passions and fears. Anam discovers a tattered book on ancient curses and exorcisms, its pages marked with frantic annotations. The room feels charged with an unseen energy, as if the very walls are whispering secrets. At night, Anam lies in bed, the diary clutched to her chest, her mind racing. The walls seem to close in around her. Suddenly, the room goes cold. The scent of jasmine fills the air, stronger than ever. She hears a faint knocking on her window, echoing the rhythm of Shakuntla's name. The knocking grows louder, and Anam decides to investigate. She opens the door to the corridor, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The knocking leads her to room 302. She cautiously opens the door. The room is unchanged, but the presence of Shakuntla's spirit is palpable. Anam feels a chill run through her body. The bed sheets begin to ruffle, the scent of jasmine overpowering. Anim's voice trembles as she calls out, "Shakuntla, are you here?" The group gathers in the chamber, the atmosphere tense. They decide to hold a séance, hoping to communicate with Shakuntla's spirit and learn the truth. They form a circle, holding hands, as Anam recites an incantation she found in the book. The séance begins. The room grows colder, the air crackling with energy. Objects begin to levitate, and the group feels an unseen force among them. A faint whisper fills the air. "Help me ... The whispers turn into a cacophony of voices, the air thick with a malevolent presence. The students, now terrified, realize they've unleashed something far more sinister than they had bargained for. The spirit manifests before them, a translucent figure dressed in a sari, her eyes filled with a mix of sadness and anger. She reveals the truth of the curse. It was not her doing, but a jealous rival's. The spirit warns them to leave her in peace or face the wrath of the curse themselves. The students return to their rooms, shaken by the experience. Anam, now more determined than ever, decides to break the curse to free Shakuntla's spirit. Anam gathers the group, presenting her findings. She believes that the curse can be lifted by performing an ancient ceremony that requires a pure heart and an offering of jasmine, Shakuntla's favorite flower. They agree to help, their curiosity and compassion for Shakuntla overcoming their fear. The students perform the ceremony under the moonlight, their voices united in the incantation. The air is thick with the scent of jasmine. As they lay out the offering, the ground trembles, and a gust of wind extinguishes their candles. The spirit of Shakuntla appears, her eyes filled with hope. The ceremony seems to be working. The students watch in awe as the spirit becomes more solid, the anger fading from her eyes. The earth trembles once more, and a brilliant light envelops the group. The spirit of Shakuntla rises, the curse lifted. Her form dissipates into the night sky, leaving only the scent of jasmine in her wake. The students, exhausted but relieved, watch the light fade. They know they've done the right thing. The hostel feels lighter, the air no longer heavy with dread. Anam sits at her desk, the diary open before her. She feels a gentle breeze and catches a faint whiff of jasmine. She looks up, a small smile playing on her lips. "Thank you," she whispers. The students settle into their beds, the comforting silence of the hostel surrounding them. But as they drift off to sleep, they can't shake the feeling that they've only just begun to uncover the secrets of the LCW hostel. The grand chandeliers of the LCW ballroom shimmered with the soft glow of 100 candles, casting flickering shadows across the floor as the students of the historical university swayed to the rhythm of the live band. The annual university ball was a night of glitz and glamour, a stark contrast to the dusty corridors and musty bookshelves of their usual haunts. The whispers of the ghostly Shakuntla Devi had momentarily been drowned out by the laughter and chatter, but the anticipation of the night's mysteries had only grown stronger. Anam, dressed in a stunning emerald gown that brought out the warmth of her eyes, felt the excitement in the air as she moved through the throng of dancers. The hostel's mysteries had become her obsession, and she was determined to uncover the truth behind the legend. Her friends, Nina and Rowan, flanked her, their eyes reflecting a mix of curiosity and concern. They had all read the diary entries, felt the cold breath of the spirit in room 302, and now they knew they were dancing on the precipice of something much larger than themselves. As the clock chimed 11, the lights flickered and the music faltered. The laughter died as the room was plunged into darkness. A collective gasp filled the space, and for a moment, all that could be heard was the rustle of fabric and the rapid beating of hearts. Then, a single candle was lit, and the light grew, spreading from one candelabra to the next, as if by an invisible hand. The band, unfazed, struck up a solemn tune, and the dancers paused, their faces a canvas of shadow and light. Anam felt a shiver run down her spine, and she knew that it wasn't just the cold draft that had swept through the room. The scent of jasmine grew stronger, and she heard the faintest whisper of a sigh that seemed to echo Shakuntla's sorrow. The hair on the back of her neck stood on end as she turned to her friends, their faces ashen. "This isn't just a trick of the mind," she murmured, her voice barely carrying over the music. "Shakuntla is here." The power outage had brought more than just darkness. It had stirred something ancient and powerful. As the lights flickered back to life, the students looked around nervously, the gaiety of the evening marred by a sudden, inexplicable fear. The band played on, but the mood had shifted, the music now a discordant backdrop to the tension in the air. In the days that followed, the incidents grew more frequent and more disturbing. Objects moved on their own, doors slammed shut without warning, and the scent of jasmine grew so intense that it was almost suffocating. Anam's skepticism had long ago been buried under the weight of the evidence, and now she was driven by a desperate need to understand. Her search led her back to the library, to the dusty shelves that had given up the diary that started it all. But this time, she found something new, a tattered journal hidden behind a book titled The Psychology of Hauntings. The journal belonged to the late Professor Gupta, who had been obsessed with Shakuntla's case. His scribbled note spoke of a dark secret, something that had been buried deep within the bowels of the hostel. The pages were filled with his feverish theories and meticulous research, detailing his obsession with Shakuntla's spirit. Anam read about his countless interviews with former students and faculty, his studies of the hostel's blueprints, and his experiments to communicate with the other side. But it was his final entry that sent a chill down her spine. The spirit, he had written, has been awakened by the renovations. The walls of room 302 can no longer contain her. She seeks vengeance for the injustices done to her in life. Anam knew she had to act fast. The spirit was growing stronger, and the safety of her friends was at risk. With trembling hands, she approached the hostel warden, Mrs. Kapoor, and shared her findings. The warden, a stoic woman with a no-nonsense attitude, listened intently, her eyes narrowing at the mention of the ancient curse. "I knew there was something amiss," she said, her voice low and grave. The renovations unearthed more than just dust and cobwebs. Together, they decided to hold a traditional ceremony to appease Shakuntla's spirit. It was a gamble, but it was the only way to protect the students and perhaps find peace for the restless soul. Anam gathered her friends and a few trusted members of the university staff, and they ventured into the heart of the hostel, to the very room where it all began. The door to room 300 creaked open, revealing a space that was both familiar and eerily changed. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine, and the walls seemed to pulse with a strange, unearthly energy. Anam stepped inside, her heart pounding in her chest. The room was bathed in moonlight, which streamed through the lace curtains, casting intricate patterns on the floor. On the bed lay a set of fresh flowers, and a picture of a young, beautiful woman, Shakuntla Devi. Her eyes seemed to follow Anam as she approached, and for a moment, she felt the weight of the tragedy that had unfolded in this very spot. The journal in her hand grew cold, and she knew she wasn't alone. The ceremony began with prayers and offerings, the voices of the participants mingling with the soft whispers of the night. As they recited the ancient incantations, the room grew colder, the air charged with anticipation. Suddenly, the candles on the makeshift altar flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness once more. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant sound of footsteps echoing through the corridors. As the candles relit themselves, the group saw a shimmering apparition standing before them. It was Shakuntla, dressed in a white sari that seemed to float around her. Her eyes were filled with a sadness that transcended time, and she looked at Anam with a silent plea. Anam took a deep breath and spoke to the spirit, her voice steady despite the fear that gripped her. "We are here to help you find peace. Tell us what you need." The ghostly figure shimmered, and a single tear fell from her eye. It hit the floor with a soft sound, and where it fell, a piece of paper fluttered to the ground. Anam picked it up, her heart racing. It was a page torn from Professor Gupta's journal, detailing a secret chamber that had been sealed during the renovations. With renewed determination, the group followed the clues, navigating through the labyrinthine hostel until they found the hidden room. The walls were lined with ancient texts and artifacts, and in the center stood a pedestal with a single object, a locket with a photograph of Shakuntla and a man who could only be her lover. The locket was warm to the touch, and Anam felt a surge of energy as she opened it. Inside was a locket of hair and a tiny, crumpled note. Unfolding it, she read the words that had been trapped for decades. "I will never leave you, my love. Our souls are bound." It was clear now. The spirit of Shakuntla had been holding on to this token, unable to rest until her love was acknowledged and her story was told. Anam understood that it was not vengeance she sought, but closure. The group gathered around the pedestal, each one placing a hand on the locket. They recited the final incantation, releasing the energy that had been trapped within. The room grew brighter, and the air grew warm, suffused with a sense of peace. As the light faded, Anam looked up to see Shakuntla's spirit standing before them, no longer weeping. She nodded her head in gratitude before slowly fading away, leaving only the scent of jasmine and the lingering warmth. The episode concluded with the students and staff returning to the ballroom, their faces a mix of relief and awe. The band played on, the music now a celebration of life and love. Anam knew that the spirit of Shakuntla Devi had finally found the peace she had been denied in life. The LCWU hostel, with its storied past, had revealed one of its deepest secrets, and the students who had once feared the whispers in the corridors now felt a strange kinship with the ghostly presence that had once haunted them. The episode opens with the sound of rustling leaves and the distant chatter of students as Anam and her friends gather around the ancient tree stump outside the LCWU hostel. It's a picturesque autumn afternoon, with the sun casting long shadows across the sprawling lawn. Anam, her curiosity piqued by the previous episode's events, looks into the camera with a mix of excitement and trepidation, hinting at the profound revelations to come. The group of friends, now more of a makeshift paranormal investigation team, have been piecing together the puzzle of Shakuntla Devi's life and the dark events that led to her tragic end. As they sit on the grass, surrounded by the rich hues of fall, Anam shares the latest development, a set of love letters she found hidden in the depths of the library archives, tucked away in a dusty, forgotten book. The letters, written with an old-fashioned charm and passion, reveal a side of Shakuntla that no one knew existed, a side that was desperately in love with a man whose identity remains shrouded in mystery. The letters are brittle and yellowed with age, each one a window into a world of whispers and stolen glances. The handwriting is elegant, a stark contrast to the urgent, sometimes desperate, words scribbled on the pages. The group reads them aloud, their voices carrying on the cool breeze, painting a vivid picture of a love that could not be. The letters speak of a love that was fierce and all-consuming, yet ultimately doomed by the strict societal norms of the time and the shadow of the curse that hung over Shakuntla. Moved by the intensity of the emotions in the letters, Anam decides to take a closer look at the tree stump, a known landmark in the hostel's lore. As she runs her hand over the grooves and carvings, she feels something give way beneath her touch. With a gasp, she pulls out a small, leather-bound box, the lock rusted with age. Inside, they find more letters, carefully preserved and tied with a faded ribbon. The group realizes that these letters must have been hidden here by Shakuntla herself, a secret so profound that it has remained buried for decades. The letters are arranged in chronological order, each one a poignant testament to a love that grew stronger with every word exchanged. The mysterious suitor, known only as A, writes of his undying love and his determination to break the curse that keeps them apart. Anim's friends, wide-eyed and spellbound, listen as she reads aloud, their hearts racing with every turn of the page. The love story unfolds like a tragic sonnet, each line a verse in the grander scheme of fate. The letters reveal that it was none other than a young professor at the university who had discovered Shakuntla's true nature and vowed to protect her. His knowledge of the ancient texts and his own lineage as a descendant of the very family that had placed the curse made him the only one capable of lifting it. Yet, as they delve deeper into the forbidden love affair, the students learn that the professor had his own demons to battle. A secret society within the university, dedicated to maintaining the curse, had discovered their love and threatened to expose them. The tension builds as Anam reads the final letter, the ink stained with what appears to be tears. It's a heart-wrenching confession from Shakuntla, revealing that she had taken her own life to protect her beloved from the clutches of the society. But before she did so, she had entrusted him with the key to breaking the cursor set of ancient incantations that could only be performed during the rare lunar eclipse that was to occur in a week's time. The group is stunned into silence, the gravity of the situation settling upon them heavy shroud. Anam, with a newfound sense of urgency, decides that they must uncover the truth behind the curse and set Shakuntla's spirit free. They spend the next few days poring over dusty tomes and ancient texts, piecing together the cryptic clues scattered throughout the letters. As the day of the lunar eclipse approaches, the paranormal activity in the hostel intensifies. The temperature drops dramatically, and the once whispered echoes of Shakuntla's spirit grow louder, more insistent. The air is thick with anticipation and fears, the students prepare for the night that will either bring closure to their ghostly tale or plunge them further into the abyss of the unknown. The night of the eclipse, the students gather in room 302, now a place of both fascination and dread. They light candles, their flickering flames casting shadows on the walls, and arrange the artifacts they've gathered from the hidden chamber. The room is a silent testament to Shakuntla's life, filled with relics that whisper of love and sorrow. Anam, now the de facto leader of the group, reads the incantation aloud, her voice steady despite the tremble in her hands. The words resonate through the room, each syllable carrying the weight of centuries of pain and longing. As the moon reaches the peak of its eclipse, the air crackles with energy, and the spirit of Shakuntla appears before them, a transparent figure dressed in the same attire described in the legend, a white sari with a crimson border, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. The students watch in awe as the spirit of Shakuntla and the ghostly apparition of the young professor materialize, their love transcending the barriers of time and death. They recite the incantation together, their voices entwined in a harmony that seems to shake the very foundations of the hostel. The room fills with a blinding light, and for a moment, everything stands still. When the light fades, the students find themselves in the presence of a serene Shakuntla, the curse lifted from her soul. With a gentle smile, she whispers her gratitude and fades away, leaving behind a faint scent of jasmine. The room feels lighter, the oppressive atmosphere lifted. The students, emotionally drained but triumphant, hug each other tightly, their eyes reflecting the understanding that they have not only solved a mystery, but also helped a lost soul find peace. The episode concludes with a montage of the students returning the artifacts to the hidden chamber, sealing it once more, and placing the letters back in the tree stump, ensuring that the love story remains a sacred secret. The camera pans out to show the quiet hostel, the moon's soft glow bathing it in an ethereal light. The final shot is of Anam, standing alone in the corridor, her gaze lingering on room 302, before she turns away, a knowing smile playing on her lips. At night, the flickering candlelight casts dancing shadows along the corridor of the LCWU hostel. The walls whisper with the echoes of past laughter and sorrow, a palpable tension in the air. The students, a tight-knit group of friends, huddle together, each one clutching a piece of paper with a line from the love letters they discovered. Anam, the protagonist, stands at the center, her eyes flicking over her notes. Her skepticism has been shaken by the tangible presence of Shakuntla's spirit. She's no longer just a psychology student. She's a detective in the most personal and haunting case she's ever encountered. The room is a tableau of shadows and light. The group gathers around the makeshift seance table, a mix of excitement and fear etched on their faces. Anam opens the dusty journal belonging to the obsessed professor, her voice steady as she reads aloud an incantation. The room grows colder, the candles flicker, and a soft, mournful sigh fills the air. The chill runs down their spines, and the scent of jasmine grows stronger. The candles flare, and the shadowy figure begins to coalesce before them. It's Shakuntla Devi, her eyes filled with an otherworldly sadness. Her translucent form is a silent testament to the tragedy that befell her. Shakuntla whispers, "Thank you for calling me forth." The students exchange nervous glances, their hearts pounding. The ghostly figure of Shakuntla flickers in the candlelight. Anam, her voice quivering, asks the first question. Anam, Shakuntla, what happened to you? Shakuntla, I was in love, a love that was never meant to be. The room is eerily still, the only sound the crackling of the candles. Anam presses on, her eyes never leaving the spectre. Anam, what about the curse? Shakuntla, the curse is a prison, one I did not forge. Her gaze drifts to the hidden chamber they discovered. We see a young, vibrant Shakuntla, her eyes alight with passion. She's with her lover, a fellow student named Rajiv. They're surrounded by ancient artifacts, their fingers tracing over them with wonder. The shadowy figure of Shakuntla solidifies, a look of horror dawning on her face. Shakuntla, the curse was born of jealousy and greed. A professor, once a friend, grew obsessed with my intellect and the power he believed I could give him. The room grows colder as the story unfolds. The students lean in, their eyes wide. Shakuntla. He manipulated me, used me. When I refused to be his pawn, he sought to control me through dark arts. I was weak, and the curse took hold. The candles dim as Shakuntla's voice grows stronger. Shakuntla. Rajiv discovered his plan. He tried to save me, but it was too late. The professor, in his rage, killed him. And to silence me, he buried my spirit here, trapped with his cursed artifacts. The room is now frigid, the air thick with tears. Anam. Who was this professor? The spirit's eyes blaze with anger. Shakuntla. His name is lost to time, but his spirit lingers, feeding on the fear and sadness he sowed. The air shimmers, and a second, darker figure appears behind Shakuntla. It's the professor's spirit, twisted and malevolent. The professor's spirit laughs, a chilling sound that sends the students recoiling. Professor Spirit, you think you can unravel my web? You're just children playing with fire. The room is a maelstrom of shadows as the two spirits clash. Anam's friends scream. Their face is a mix of terror and determination. Anam, with newfound resolve, stands between the two spirits. Anam, we will not let you harm her any longer. Tell us how to break the curse. The professor's spirit sneers, but there's a flicker of fear in his eyes. Professor Spirit, only by destroying the artifacts and freeing her spirit can the curse be broken. The lights flicker back on, and the spirits vanish. The room is once again filled with the normal sounds of the hostel. The students, shaken but determined, set to work. The group, armed with the knowledge from the seance, searches the hostel for the cursed artifacts. They find themselves in the bowels of the building, where dust and cobwebs cling to the ancient stones. The basement is a labyrinth of forgotten storerooms and cobwebs. Anim's flashlight beam dances over the floor, revealing a hidden door. The room is a treasure trove of artifacts, the air thick with the scent of decay and dark magic. The students move with purpose, gathering the items. The artifacts are arranged on the floor, a circle of protection drawn around them. Anam reads from the journal, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The incantation reaches its crescendo. The artifacts glow with an unearthly light, and the professor's spirit reappears, snarling. Professor Spirit, you will not prevail. The students link hands, their collective energy building. The artifacts begin to crack and crumble, releasing a burst of light that envelops Shakuntla. The professor's spirit is torn apart by the light, his screams echoing through the halls. The room falls silent as the light fades, and Shakuntla stands before them, whole and radiant. Shakuntla, thank you. I am free. Her form starts to fade. Anam, what about the other spirits? Shakuntla. They were lost souls, trapped by the curse. With it broken, they too shall find peace. The camera pans to the window, showing the spirits of the hostel moving towards the light, ascending into the night sky. The room is empty. The candles burn low. Anam closes the journal, her eyes brimming with tears. In mourning, the students emerge from room 302, exhausted but triumphant. The hostel feels lighter, the shadow of fear lifted. The camera pans over the students, now a tight-knit group bonded by their shared experience. They stand around the ancient tree stump, a symbol of their victory. The room is empty, the bed neatly made. Only the faint scent of jasmine remains, a gentle reminder of the love that once bloomed here. Anam sits at her desk, the diary open before her. She reads the final entry, penned by Shakuntla herself. The episode ends with Anam, her voiceover reading the diary entry, as she gazes out the window at the new day dawning. ANAMVO. To those who come after me, may you find the strength to conquer your own shadows, and may love always be the guiding light that sets you free. The students of LCWU Hostel gather in room 302, the epicenter of the supernatural events that have been plaguing them. The walls, once adorned with the vibrant colors of youth and ambition, now seem to bear the weight of the dark secrets they hold. The air is thick with anticipation and fear as Anam, the protagonist, leads the group in setting up the ritual space, her psychology textbook open to a dog-eared page on the psychology of hauntings. Anam 20s, focused, slightly nervous, sits cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by her friends. Nina 20s, skeptical. Ollie 20s, practical, and Minor 20s, spiritual. They've pushed aside the furniture to create a sacred circle with candles and herbs. The flickering light casts eerie shadows on their faces. Anam, okay. Everyone, we need to stay calm and focused. The purpose of this ritual is to communicate with Shakuntla's spirit, not to provoke it. Nina, skeptical. But what if it's not just Shakuntla? What if there's something else here? Ollie, practical. We're just here to get answers and move on. Nothing more, nothing less. Minor, spiritual. And to help her find peace, the group takes a moment to collect themselves. Then begins the ritual. Anam reads from a page torn from the local historian's book, her voice steady yet filled with a hint of doubt. As the incantation reaches its climax, the candles flicker wildly, and a sudden, icy breeze sweeps through the room. The door slams shut on its own, and the students' eyes widen in terror. The room goes silent. The candles stop flickering and burn steadily once more. Anam takes a deep breath and speaks to the spirit. Anam, Shakuntla, if you're here, we mean you no harm. We just want to know the truth. For a moment, there is only silence. Then, a faint whisper fills the room, a chilling sound that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Shakuntla's whisper, I am not alone. The students exchange anxious glances. Anam's heart races as she continues. Anam, what do you mean? The whispers grow louder, more insistent, and the room temperature drops further. The students huddle closer together, the warmth of their bodies the only defense against the encroaching cold. Shakuntla's whisper, the shadows, they hide. Suddenly, the whispers are drowned out by a cacophony of angry voices and unearthly sounds. The walls seem to close in on them, and the once peaceful room is now a chaotic maelstrom of fear and confusion. The students sit in stunned silence, their makeshift ritual materials scattered around the room. Anam's eyes are wide with horror as she realizes the true nature of the haunting. Anam, it's not just Shakuntla. There's something else here. Something darker. Ali swallows hard. What do we do now? Nina pulls out her phone, her fingers trembling as she Googles malicious spirits and ancient curses. The articles she finds only deepen their fear. Nina, guys, I think we've made a mistake. The phone screen flickers, and the room goes cold again. An image forms in the flickering candlelight, a shadowy figure with glowing eyes. It's not Shakuntla. It's something much more sinister. Malevolent spirit whispers, you've woken me. Now you will pay. The figure vanishes, leaving the students shivering and questioning their sanity. Anam, ever the skeptic, decides to use her psychological training to analyze the situation logically. Anam, we need to figure out what we're dealing with. We can't just run from it. They spend the next few days researching, interviewing more locals, and piecing together the story of the hostel's grim past. They learn of a vengeful spirit that had been trapped by the professor, who was obsessed with Shakuntla's case. The professor had hoped to harness its power, but had instead unleashed it upon the unsuspecting students. The students pore over dusty tomes and old newspaper clippings, their eyes heavy with lack of sleep and the weight of their discovery. Anim's voice is firm as she outlines their next steps. Anam, we need to perform an exorcism, and we need to do it tonight. The group is divided. Some want to leave the hostel immediately, while others feel compelled to help Shakuntla and put an end to the malevolent spirit's reign of terror. Anim's leadership and determination win out, and they decide to stay and fight. The students have transformed the room into a fortress of protection. Salt blinds the doorways, and sacred symbols are drawn on the floor and walls. They stand in a circle, holding hands, as Anam reads from a book of ancient incantations. Anam whispers, by the power of the elements and the light within us, we banish thee from this place. The room shakes, and the malevolent spirit materializes in the center of the circle. It's a hulking figure, shrouded in darkness, with eyes that burn like embers. The spirit roars in fury. "Malevolent spirit, you dare to challenge me?" Annam remains unfazed, her voice rising with conviction. "Annam, we stand together. Leave this place and never return." The spirit laughs, a sound like nails on a chalkboard, and the room goes cold. The candles blow out, plunging them into darkness. The students hold their ground, their hearts pounding in their chests. Suddenly, a warm light fills the room, and the sound of a soft, sorrowful melody floats through the air. The darkness retreats, and Shakuntla's ghostly figure appears beside them. "Shakuntla, thank you, I am free." The malevolent spirit snarls, but the light and the power of the students' unity force it back into the shadows. The next morning the room is back to normal. The only evidence of the previous night's events, the faint scent of jasmine lingering in the air. Annam sits at the desk, her eyes red from lack of sleep, but her expression peaceful. Annam, voiceover in the end. It wasn't about fear or the unknown. It was about finding the strength within ourselves to face the darkness and banish it. The camera pans out to show the now closed diary of Shakuntla, the love letters neatly stacked beside it, and the shattered remnants of the professor's obsession. Nina, voiceover. The legend of Shakuntla Devi is no longer a ghost story. It's a reminder of love, loss, and the power of redemption. The students share a knowing look, their bond stronger than ever. They've survived the horror of the hostel, and in doing so, have discovered the true meaning of friendship and courage. Later the students pack their bags, ready to leave the hostel behind. They exchange hugs, the weight of their experience etched into their faces. Ollie, to Annam, "You did good. Annam, you faced your fears." Annam, smiling slightly, "We all did." Minor, voiceover. "I know we leave the hostel, a part of us will always remain with Shakuntla." The episode ends with the students walking out of the hostel into the bright sunlight, their shadows stretching out behind them, symbolizing the darkness they've left behind. Nina, voiceover. "But as we walk away, we know that the veil between worlds is thinner than we ever imagined. And sometimes, the most terrifying things are the ones we never see coming." The camera lingers on the hostel, the windows of room 300 gleaming in the sun. Inside, the room is empty, but the whispers of Shakuntla's story linger, a soft reminder of the night the veil lifted. The final episode opens with the students of LCW Hostel gathered in the library, their eyes glued to the pages of Shakuntla Devi's diary. Annam, her heart racing with anticipation, reads aloud the last entry that speaks of a profound love and an unbearable pain. The room is thick with tension, each student aware that the truth they seek is a double-edged sword that could either grant them peace or invite more horror into their lives. The flickering candlelight casts long shadows on the dusty bookshelves. Annam's voice echoes through the room. She reads Shakuntla's last words. Annam, reading from the diary. "And so, my love, I make this pact with the shadows. Let them take me, but please, let you be free." The group exchanges nervous glances, the gravity of their situation weighing heavily upon them. The walls of room 302 seem to breathe with malicious intent as the students enter. The air is cold, the scent of jasmine overpowering. They know they are not alone. Guided by the ghostly whispers from the diary, Annam discovers a hidden chamber beneath the floorboards. The room is a shrine to Shakuntla's lost love, filled with photographs, trinkets, and a single, faded rose. The malevolent presence makes its presence known, the floorboards groaning, the portraits on the walls shifting eerily. The students are trapped, their only hope the truth hidden within the pages of the diary. The group huddles together, their fear palpable as they perform the ritual. They recite the incantation, provided by the local historian, their voices shaking but resolute. The hall fills with spectral images of Shakuntla's past, the tragic story of her love affair and the subsequent betrayal by the one she trusted most, the professor who had claimed to help her. The students, now piecing together the puzzle, find a locket. Inside is a picture of Shakuntla with her lover, the same man whose spirit has been tormenting them all along. His name is revealed to be Professor Avinash. The spirit of Professor Avinash twisted by rage and regret, confronts the students. He confesses to faking his own death to be with Shakuntla, only to find her spirit bound by a curse. Professor Avinash, voice echoing, "I wanted to free her, but the curse was too strong. I've been trapped here." Feeding off her pain, unable to move on, the students, armed with the knowledge of the true curse, stand united against the malevolent spirit. They must convince Shakuntla to break the pact she made and find peace. The confrontation between the students and Professor Avinash's spirit is intense. Anam, her voice trembling but firm, speaks to Shakuntla through the veil of the afterlife. "Anam, Shakuntla, we know the truth. Professor Avinash didn't mean to harm you. He was lost in his own despair. It's time to let go." Shakuntla's spirit materializes, her eyes filled with anguish. She reveals her sacrifice. She had bound her own soul to the hostel to protect her beloved spirit from the curse. Shakuntla ghostly whisper, "I could not bear to see him suffer for eternity. I took his pain upon myself." The students, with tears in their eyes, perform an ancient ceremony to lift the curse. The air is charged with an otherworldly energy. The very fabric of the hostel seems to tremble. As the ceremony reaches its climax, the locket glows with a warm light, breaking the chains that bind Shakuntla's spirit. The malevolent presence dissipates, leaving only the gentle embrace of Shakuntla's spirit. The students watch in awe as she and Professor Avinash's spirit ascend, their love finally free. The sun rises, casting warm light through the dusty windows. The hostel is at peace, the curse lifted. The students, exhausted but relieved, share a quiet moment of camaraderie. Anam, her resolve stronger than ever, decides to share their story with the world, ensuring that Shakuntla's sacrifice is not forgotten. The episode ends with the students leaving the hostel, forever changed by their encounter with the supernatural. They take with them a newfound appreciation for life, friendship, and the power of love. Months later, a new group of students moves into the hostel. The legend of Shakuntla is now a cautionary tale of love and sacrifice. The once feared hostel is now a symbol of courage and friendship. The Hauntings End is a poignant finale to a season filled with horror, suspense, and ultimately, the triumph of the human spirit. The students' journey from skepticism to understanding, from fear to courage, mirrors the evolution of the audience's perception of the supernatural. Through their harrowing experience, they learn that love can be both a source of strength and a prison for the soul. The story of Shakuntla Devi becomes a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of places, the light of truth can shine through. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment below with your thoughts. Have you experienced a spine-chilling horror that left you trembling? Share your terrifying tale with us by emailing nightmarenetwork.com, and we'd be thrilled to feature it on our platform.